everyone, welcome to a special supplementary episode of Black Box Down. We're between seasons at the moment. We're doing a little work, doing our research, getting ready for the next batch of episodes. But we don't like to leave you hanging. We're going to have a little bit of supplemental content. And in the past, we've done episodes where, we talk about travel stories or we talk about movies and aviation in movies. So we thought we would revisit this aviation in movies idea, talk about a few more movies and how they portray aviation. And as usual, it's Gus and Chris. Hello, Chris.
Hello. And we have a guest.
We have a guest. Yeah, we have something a little special this episode. We have one of our friends, Barbara, joining us today. Hello, Barbara.
Hello, I'm a little special.
You are.
Special in your hearts.
Yes.
We work with Barbara on many projects. We're all part of Rooster Teeth, specifically Squad Team Force, and we do a podcast with Barbara as well called Tales from the Stinky Dragon. It's a Dungeons and Dragons podcast. You don't need to know anything about D&D. It's a little different than this podcast, but I think it's pretty good. I like it a lot.
A little different.
There's no planes in it. Oh, wait, there is a plane in it.
There is.
Yeah.
People are turning into planes somehow instead of us finding them.
You'll have to. You should go. You should go check it out. We have a lot of fun doing that episode or doing that show.
Yeah, it's really fun, and it's very like just silly, and if you just like storytelling and comedy and friends having fun, then you'll.
Again, you don't need to know anything about D&D.
Yeah. I could confirm that because I did not know anything about D&D going into it, and I'm learning a lot.
It's just about like storytelling and making jokes, and it's a lot of fun.
Yeah.
So going back to Black Box Down, we each brought a movie we want to talk about this episode. Does anyone want to go first? Did anyone want me to go first? What are y'all feeling?
I have I think the shortest clip, so I can go first.
Okay. What movie are you talking about, Chris?
Well, this is inspired by the recent episode we did about the Vietnam operation with the orphans, the episode we just did.
Are you doing Oliver Twist?
No. Operation Dumbo Drop, which, if you aren't familiar, is a 1995 Disney film where some U.S. military needs to find and transport an elephant across Vietnam in order for like goodwill with like local Vietnamese who are important for the military operations.
How wild is it that Disney was like, hey, let's make a kids' family movie about the Vietnam War?
Yeah, that was a little weird to me. And also, not to be confused with the movie Dumbo released in 1941. Yeah. It's a different Disney movie.
Yeah.
I'd watched it as a kid. Not like a ton, but it was one of those things that, parents put on VHS at some point, get us to be quiet. But it has, so I went back and went through it. There are 2 plane scenes in it.
I wanted to bring that up with you, Chris, if you don't mind me interjecting.
Mm-hmm.
Why did they call this movie Operation Dumbo Drop when the elephant spends more time on a boat in this movie?
I know. I think it's just the premise was based off of an actual operation. And
it's based on a true story?
No.
Yes. And I'll talk about it. So in the movie, they get the elephants and they're trying to figure out how to get them to this remote region of Vietnam. And initially they're like, we'll fly them. So this scene happens around 34 minutes in it. They have this elephant and the one guy is like, yeah, I got some like buffalo tranquilizers like off eBay or something. It wasn't eBay because it was 1995. And then this is a kids movie in Disney. They have a scene where they're putting the laxatives up the elephant's butt.
Sedatives.
Sorry.
Yeah, not laxative. That would be a completely different movie. I think.
Yes. Sorry, that'd be the worst thing to give an elephant before putting it on a plane. Did I say laxatives?
You
said the whole time.
Yeah.
Okay.
Well, just that last time.
Okay. So the guy is like kind of guesses like, I don't know, maybe 1. So they give him one of the sedatives, and then just put the elephant on the plane, and he like goes to sleep. And then they're like, all right, let's go. Like that was their process.
Mm-hmm. Very, very medical. Very appropriate, yes.
And they in the movie they have like Ray Liotta does it, right?
Yeah.
It's like a whole thing. They have this giant pill in their hands, and they're like, "How are we going to make the elephant swallow this?" And they're like, "Good news, he's not going to swallow it."
And you're the man for the job, buddy.
Yep.
Yeah. So then the elephant gets on the plane and the pilot's like, he's not going to wake up or anything, right? And they're like, no. And then,
because they had a second one that they were going to use.
Yeah, they were saving the second one to, I guess, give him halfway through the flight. I don't know. But the elephant starts waking up and starts going crazy, and the plane is like shaking back and forth. And the pilot, and the other military people who aren't in charge of the elephants are going to shoot the elephant or drop it immediately. Just shoot, drop it out of the back. But then they like stop them and they land the plane. And then they're like, well, now we got to try and they try and get the elephant on a boat. They spend a lot of time on a boat.
Well, I do want to mention, we have talked numerous episodes about weight distribution in a plane and center of gravity limits. So yeah, a multi-thousand, a couple of ton elephant moving around in a plane and changing the weight limits would be a huge problem.
Well, I have a question. Would the size of that plane that was carrying the elephant even be able to take off with an elephant inside? Because I don't know what the weight limit is or what is possible.
It would, I think.
Because it was a pretty small plane.
Well, I think it would, because the real elephants in real life they used a similar plane. In real life, they used a C-130.
Okay.
And then the one in Dumbo Drop, I believe, is the C-123. Now, I don't know.
Chris did his homework. Oh, my God. Yeah, I'm kind of impressed.
I'm not exactly sure the differences between the two. I think, is the 30 bigger?
Yeah, the most obvious difference, if you were looking at these planes, is the C-130 has 4 propellers, and the C-123 only has 2. And I noticed in the credits for this movie, they actually miscredit this plane as being a C-130.
Oh.
Better call them up.
Yep, it's actually a C-123. So I anticipated this question, Barbara. So I looked it up. And an elephant can weigh anywhere from 5 to 14,000 pounds. This specific elephant was an Asian elephant. Asian elephants and African elephants are kind of different. You can tell, the easiest way to tell is based on the ears. And Asian elephants are a bit smaller than African elephants. So we could say it's going to be on the lower side, most likely. So we can estimate, I don't know, 8,000 pounds maybe. So I started thinking, what other things do planes drop, like planes like this drop? And I thought about Humvees. I've seen the military drop giant Humvees out of a plane, and one Humvee can weigh 6,000 pounds. So this elephant would not be that much heavier than a Humvee that might get dropped out of a plane.
All right, fair enough. That's pretty cool.
Yeah.
The whole time I was watching that happen, I was just like, that plane would not be able to take off. Oh my God, what's going on?
So yeah, they get on, finish the kind of summary of the movie. They get on the boat. The boat doesn't work out. They transport bunches of wacky scenarios happen, and then they end up at a base, and they're like, we need to take it the rest of the way to the village, and then the military's like, we don't need to transport elephants anymore. It's not not important. So then they do a little heist, an elephant heist to like secretly steal a plane and drop it off at the village.
I gotta say, there's no better visual than an elephant in a little container falling out of a plane. Just like wagging its little trunk around. Like,
it seems so chill.
I know.
Yeah, it was super. I mean, I assume they gave it not laxatives, sedatives.
Sedatives.
For the second flight, they had that other pill, I guess. But yeah, so what ended up happening is they took the plane and they airdropped it. They built a little the elephant actually helped them build it too. I don't know if y'all saw that. The elephant was helping them build a little cargo, little pallet that it was standing
that way it's comfortable. It's comfortable with it.
Yeah. But then there was an issue, like the cord broke because they got shot at, and then so the elephant just felt like was free falling, and so Ray Liotta had to like jump out of the plane and catch up to the elephant and pull its parachute. Yeah.
Yeah.
It's very very.
By the way, did it bother anyone else that Danny Glover jumped out of the plane just holding on to a kid?
Oh my God.
Yes.
Yes.
I was like, they didn't even strap that kid in. It was like Danny Glover sees Ray Liotta. It's like, oh, well, it's our time to jump, and just like hugs a kid and jumps out of the plane. It's like, they did not give him a parachute or strap him in together or anything.
I know.
He
Any
wasn't
sort of precaution.
Initially, he wasn't going to go at all because it wasn't safe. But then they were being shot at, so then he was like, all right, kid, we're getting out of here, and just jumped out. But I was like, man, he didn't like what he jumped out when he pulled the parachute. That's a lot of like.
Right.
That's exactly what I was thinking. Like I went skydiving one time, and when the parachute gets released, it like jolts you super hard upwards, and you would have had to be holding onto that kid real tight.
Yeah. Otherwise, at that point, there's nothing you could do because now you catch up to him. You already pulled the chute.
That's another thing too that always amuses me. Whenever there's like something that falls out of a plane, and then one guy jumps out to try to catch up to it. And so Ray Liotta trying to catch up to the elephant to pull its chute. And I'm like, he jumped out like probably a good 2 minutes after this elephant falls out of the sky.
Yeah, he like takes his time. He doesn't like immediately jump out. He like puts his helmet on and straps it. He has like a cup of coffee. He reads the newspaper.
And then he bullets down.
Yep. He jumps out, he pulls the elephant chute, then he pulls his chute, and they're landing safe, and then the kid just hits the ground because because he wasn't strapped in, and they weren't able to like hold on to him.
It's also a weird scene in the movie where like there's the other soldiers at the gun like targeting the elephant, and the soldier at the gun's like, "Your order, sir?" And the I guess this commanding officer's like, "I didn't join the military to shoot elephants." It's like,
what? One other guy goes, "I did," and then just
the movie takes a dark turn.
Yeah. But so they get the elephants to the village, but this is actually based off an actual mission in Vietnam. So the U.S. was buying and transporting lumber to this remote region of Vietnam, and it was like really expensive, and there was trees everywhere. So they decided to build a sawmill and then just do it locally. Mm-hmm. Problem is once they cut down the trees, the area was so underdeveloped that they had no way to transport the logs to and from where they needed them. And they tried using trucks and like, Humvees and things like that, but they couldn't get through. It's jungle, And since they didn't have like roads, they like, well, we should use elephants. And so they found and purchased 2 elephants for this sawmill, but the elephants were like 400 miles away. So then they had this task of trying to get the elephants to the sawmill, and they couldn't walk them. And they tried putting them on barges, but the elephants got seasick. So there's some like, that happened in the movie. The elephant got seasick.
What does it look like when an elephant gets seasick?
It looked pretty gross in the movie.
Yeah. Well, like, I think I
know that's not the purpose of this podcast at all, but I do wonder like if that actually happens in real life, if elephants could get seasick.
I mean, they do, because apparently that was part of the problem.
Oh, wow.
There was a line from one of the guys, they're like, "Oh, I've seen a lot of things in this war, and that's the worst I've seen." I was like, "Really? The elephant throwing up is the worst you've seen?" Like, I don't know. Maybe like friends being killed.
It's a Disney movie.
Yeah. Yeah, people don't die in Disney movies.
No, except for Scar.
Yeah. Yeah. So they in real life, they decided to fly them to this area. Their initial plan was they were going to airdrop it from the planes using parachutes, like the movie. But then British SPCA, which is like an animal welfare charity.
There you go.
Got it.
Third time's a charm.
Sedatives. Got wind. And,
laxatives.
Yeah, laxatives. And so they decided to they flew them on the C-130 300 miles and then to the nearest airfield, landed, and then wrapped them in cargo nets and wooden pallets, and then flew them the rest of the way on helicopters, about 65 miles.
Man, you did a lot of research into this.
Yeah, well, it's the movie's based roughly on real things, which I was surprised to find too, because whenever I remember as a kid, it's like, this is stupid. Even as a kid, I was like, there's no way they would a whole operation would be like, why would they fly and drop elephants using a parachute? But they do it with cars and Fast Furious 6. So I don't know. Military does interesting
that's the movie I should have picked for my coverage.
So we haven't done that yet.
No. So I've been trying to look this up because I didn't believe you, Chris. He's right. It was called Operation Barroom.
That's crazy.
And I guess they say that it didn't get a lot of coverage because the same day that they did this, a high-ranking officer in Vietnam got killed, and it was the same day that Martin Luther King was assassinated in the United States.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
So like all this other news was happening, so this got kind of buried. And an interesting bit of trivia about Operation Barroom that I'm reading here is, they did have to sedate the elephant, and I guess whatever chemical they used to tranquilize the elephant gives elephants gas.
Oh,
So the only person who thought ahead about this was the vet who administered the tranquilizer. So he brought a gas mask because he knew the elephant was going to be farting on the plane.
Wow.
And no one else did. And they all had to like sit in this plane that was filled with elephant farts.
oh my God. That's hilarious. That was one thing I read about the tranquilizer. In the movie, they were like, yeah, just shove it up its butt and, maybe that'll be enough.
Well, the guy he broke the second one. It definitely wasn't enough.
In an article I read, they had a tranquilizer that also required an antidote to wake them up. So it was like there wasn't the same danger of the elephant waking up and stomping,
Yeah.
versus I don't know, this might be enough.
Wild.
Yeah. So anyway, Operation Dumbo Drop. It's an okay movie, I guess, for kids. I don't know.
It's fun.
I want to see someone Photoshop that, like the Operation Dumbo Drop poster with, it's an okay movie for kids, I guess.
I guess, yeah.
I mean, even as a kid, I was like, yeah, it was okay.
It does seem a little adult for kids in some senses.
Yeah, it may be not wacky enough for kids, but too kiddish for adults. I don't know.
The perfect balance. My kind of movie.
Yeah.
Shady Rays has the essentials you need to make summer complete. Shady Rays sunglasses offer an industry-best combination of fit, style, and performance without the big brand price tag. Doesn't stop at the quality. Shady Rays offers the most insane protection program in all of eyewear. Every pair is backed by lost and broken replacements. So if you lose or break your pair, even on day one, they'll send you a brand new pair. So wear with confidence because Shady Rays has your back long after your purchase. They also provide 10 meals to fight hunger in America with every order. They've donated over 20 million meals to date. Look good in your shades and feel good by making an impact. If you don't love them, exchange them for a new pair or return them for free within 30 days. There's no risk when you shop with Shady Rays. Their team always has your back. So just for our listeners, Shady Rays is giving out their best deal of the season. Go to shadyrays.com, use code BlackBoxDown for 50% off 2 or more pairs of polarized sunglasses. Try for yourself the shades rated 5 stars by over 200,000 people. Again, go to shadyrays.com and use code BlackBoxDown. Some of life's best moments happen around a roaring fire. And a smokeless fire pit from Solo Stove makes your outdoor moments even more memorable because instead of having to constantly dodge campfire fumes, you can sit back, relax, and actually enjoy the fire. Really can't overstate how awesome that smokeless design is. I think we all associate outdoor fires with having to dodge smoke or having that smoke just constantly get in your eyes or making you cough. Really not a worry with Solo Stove. That smokeless design is amazing, works so well. It's absolutely super easy to start a fire as well. The whole thing's beautiful, looks really awesome. And you can have a fire going within just, a minute or two. And then the cleanup is so easy. There's no charred hunks of wood, just some white ash. Just got to clean it out. So upgrade your backyard with the Solo Stove fire pit. Create story-worthy moments without the fireside fumes. The stainless steel construction is designed to regulate airflow and burn more efficiently. There's so little smoke, you'll wonder how there's so much fire. It's the perfect catalyst for getting outside and spending more time with family and friends. You can build lasting memories around a Solo Stove fire pit, and they're brilliantly engineered. They're to be easy to use. They're built to last. They're easy to light with a few bits of starter. Your fire is blazing in minutes. They're so confident you'll love it. They offer a lifetime warranty and a 30-day free return policy. Right now, you can get big discounts on all fire pits during Solo Stove's Labor Day sale. Use promo code BlackBoxDown at solostove.com for an extra $10 off. That's solostove.com, promo code BlackBoxDown for $10 off on top of their incredible Labor Day discounts. But hurry, the Labor Day sale ends September 11th. All right, well, thanks, Chris. I learned a lot today. I'm impressed.
I did too. I really didn't think that was based off anything even remotely true, but
no.
And that a plane could take off with an elephant inside of it. Who knew?
Barbara, you want to talk about your movie?
Yeah. So I picked a movie that pretty much 99% of it takes place on a plane, which I thought would be appropriate for this podcast.
Mm-hmm.
It was Red Eye featuring Rachel McAdams and Cillian Murphy, I think is how you pronounce it. Yeah. I always forget how to pronounce it, if it's Killian or Cillian.
Cillian. I actually saw this movie in the theater when it came out.
Wow. Really? I think I might have as well, or maybe shortly after it came out.
Yeah, It came out in 2005, and I saw it in the theater, and I have not seen it again since then. So I had to rewatch it for this episode. It's a short movie.
Yeah, it's only like, I think, an hour and 25 minutes, hour 20.
Yeah, definitely, for sure.
Yeah, so this movie basically is about this woman who is a manager of a hotel, gets on a plane, a red eye, which is like an overnight flight, which I'm sure you guys have maybe talked about on this podcast before. And she is seated next to this gentleman who she had met in the airport prior, who they were kind of flirty with each other. And it turns out that he is a bad guy, real bad guy, who is trying to, I guess, assassinate this person of political power who is staying at the hotel that she manages, and gets her to try to move him to a room where they are going to target him, and are also in the process threatening to murder her father at the same time. And because this is the early 2000s, the phones on the plane still somehow work. I don't know how that magic works, but there are a lot of things that happen in this movie that I feel are just like super unrealistic and are almost comedic, knowing what I know now about air travel. One of which is just, you can hear everyone on a plane. Especially people sitting either right behind you or right in front of you. And there's like some very loud injuries that happen and things that are said between the two of them that I think anybody in their right mind would immediately alert some type of staff or personnel.
Yeah, he straight up punches her and knocks her out at some point in the middle of the flight.
He headbutts her. Yeah.
Oh, is it a headbutt?
Yeah, it's a headbutt.
Yeah.
And there's a one point in the movie too where she, somehow manages to get to the bathroom, convinces him to let her use the bathroom, and writes on the mirror that 18F has a bomb. And he ends up showing up at the bathroom and seeing the message on the board, or on the mirror rather, and like comes into the bathroom and closes the door behind them. And there's a little girl who watches this all happen and tells the flight attendant like, oh, there's a woman in there and a man just went in with her. And the flight attendant was like, oh, I guess it's going to be one of those flights.
It's like such a dismissive line.
Which I think, like, I don't know if I'm incorrect in this assumption, but I'm pretty sure if you do something like that on a plane, you get like banned from the airline.
They would at least start knocking on the door to try to get you out of there.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And as I told Barbara this, we talked about this the other day when I knew she was doing red eye, and we've talked about this on this podcast before, how you can unlock the bathroom doors from the outside.
Yeah.
So yeah, even if they didn't open the door and things escalated, they would just tell them, we're going to unlock this door and open it, to get them out of there.
Absolutely. Yeah. I didn't know that was a feature, although I guess it makes sense because I think during takeoff and landing, don't the flight attendants lock the bathroom doors so they can't open up?
And in fact, so I sent Barbara a video showing how it typically works. Normally there's like a little metal sign that'll say like lavatory or something, and you like lift that and there's a handle in there.
Like a little latch.
Right. On this particular kind of door that they have on this plane, you see they did like a close-up where it goes from like occupied to vacant. You just like push in on that and then move it with your finger. That's connected to the lock.
Yeah. And I think the other scene in my mind, which was the most unrealistic thing to happen, was the second they land and, the seatbelt sign goes off, which usually, as you guys know, everyone immediately stands up and goes to grab their bag. She is at the back of the plane and is able to run through the aisle as people are up getting their bags, like all the way to the front of the plane. And I was like, no, sir, that would not be doable. People would be standing. Even when people are like, hey, if you could wait until a few of our passengers in the back get through because they have a tight connection. Nobody listens to that.
And no one lets people by.
No.
Yeah, I will say, in their defense, I looked it up. Rachel McAdams is like 5'4", was what I saw online. She's small enough where maybe she could like dart around people and squeeze through. But yeah, I agree with you. Like, there's no way I'm doing that. I cannot fit around people in that aisle. It's not happening for me.
I guess also she had she wasn't taking a bag with her because she was trying to escape and stuff like that.
Right.
She also just stabbed, what's his name?
Cillian
Murphy.
Yeah, with a pen, and like hardly anyone noticed at first.
There was also no blood.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And then he spent the rest of the movie with like a tie wrapped around his throat.
It's like a silk scarf.
And it looked like a cummerbund or something, but there was no blood.
I will say it definitely made that villain way less intimidating.
I know.
The second that happened where he's like, I'm gonna get you.
One thing that bugged me, whenever they're landing, they're about 5 feet from the ground. Like, you can see out the window. They're like about to touch ground, and then the captain's like goes on the intercom. It's like, flight crew, please be seated. 'Cause we're about to,
They're
and
like
it's like
about to land.
Yeah, they're like, they would already be seated. Also, they wouldn't be doing little messages like as the moment they're touching down like that.
Yeah.
Yeah, because everyone's already ready to go. Yeah, it's like just a fun, silly action thriller movie.
So I have a long list of things I want to talk about from this movie, Barbara.
Okay. Hit me.
First of all, it's a fictional airline, right? It's called Fresh Air.
Fresh Air, which I thought was a very funny airline name.
Was an actual airline.
Oh.
No.
Yeah, Fresh Air was actually a cargo airline based out of Nigeria. That was still operational when this movie came out. They shut down in 2007. So there was an actual Fresh Air.
I totally thought that was made up for the movie.
No, I'm sure it is. I'm sure they were like, they were like, oh, that's a funny name. I'm sure they didn't look. And it's like, oh, that is actually a cargo airline in Nigeria.
Yeah.
You know, they obviously do not fly a Texas to Florida flight. The plane was supposed to be a Boeing 767. You see all the shots in the plane. It's a dual aisle. In fact, in one of the shots, you even see like the seat back card, like the evacuation procedure, and it says Boeing 767. I think they showed like 4 different planes from the exterior for this movie. It was just like every time they showed the plane from the outside, it was a different plane. I mean, like it was all over the place. In fact, when you see the plane, when they're getting ready to board the plane and they're still on the ground in Texas, it's a tri-jet when they look out the window at it.
What?
Yeah. When a 767 should only have 2 engines. You know, when they show the plane flying, sometimes it's an Airbus A320. Sometimes it's a Boeing 737. It's just, it was just always a different plane that they showed. There was no consistency.
It's like movies like this where they heavily feature planes or even like scenes on planes. Do you think that they just didn't have any sort of consultant or any sort of person who was like an aviation expert to make sure there was some type of consistency?
I'm sure for them, it's just like whatever footage we have, just put it. Most people don't notice that, right? It's like, it's only people like me who are like, actually, that's the wrong kind of plane.
Yeah, I definitely didn't notice anything watching
Or it's
it.
like stock footage. Even,
right.
You know, or a stock. Oh, we already have the model for this plane. Can we use this for the CGI? You know?
Yeah, but even sometimes, like they showed the plane, the bottom was blue. Sometimes the bottom was white. Like even the paint, like the colors on the plane were inconsistent. Anyway.
Interesting.
They described this movie. Well, I forget how they described the movie. It's something like Terror at 30,000 feet or something like that.
Something very like late 90s, early 2000s like that, yeah.
Eastbound flights, like flying from Texas to Florida, you would fly at an odd number flight level. So they would have been flying at 29,000 or 31,000. They would only fly 30,000 feet if they're flying westbound. Also, but at one point in the movie, they do encounter turbulence, and the captain says that they're cleared up to 35,000 feet to try to get around it. That is a correct altitude for them. Odd number going east.
I never knew that.
Yeah, it's to try to minimize the possibility of planes colliding head on.
I'm just sitting here being like, man, the other passengers, I really should be able to hear them. And you're like, this flight at this altitude.
I have a whole podcast about this.
I guess you're right.
So another thing that I thought was weird was, you know, like you said earlier, they're seated in row 18, but they're like nearly at the back of the plane. There's only like 4 rows behind them before the bathroom. Row 18 should be in front of the wing. They should be much further forward in the plane than where they actually are.
If it's that big of an aircraft, yeah.
Yeah. And typically, even if you're flying like a 737, like a single aisle plane, typically they number like 20 or 21 as exit rows right over the wing. I mean, of course, that changes airline to airline. It just seemed weird to me.
Yeah.
There was a weird announcement from the flight attendant before they took off. Like normally there's lots of announcements like, you know, be seated, you know, they do the pre-flight briefing, all of that stuff. Before they took off, a flight attendant came on and her announcement was, "Ladies and gentlemen, we've been cleared for takeoff. Please enjoy your flight." I was like,
yeah.
That's a weird thing.
I remember hearing that and I was like, I don't think I've ever heard any announcement even remotely close to that.
Right. It's just weird.
Yeah. We've been cleared for takeoff. Okay.
Yeah. Like, okay. Like the passengers don't need to know that. They're already seated with their seatbelt on. Then when they're taking off, there's footage from outside of a plane taking off from a runway, and you only see it for like a fraction of a second. And I rewound this over and over because it was really hard to see because it flashes by so fast. but I think it was actually footage of a plane landing, not a plane taking off. Because it looks like the thrust reversers are deployed, which would be only on takeoff, only on landing, not on takeoff. But I couldn't see it very well. It flashed by so fast. It looked like that, maybe. I also wanted to comment on the phones like you did, Barbara. It's funny to see seat back phones. You never see those anymore. Like they're totally antiquated and gone.
I know. And why is that? Like, is they're just like discouraged now of people using them, or they just didn't work very well?
I think they were decommissioned in like 2006, and then
somewhere
they
around
sold the frequency. Like they auctioned off the frequency because you know it was like some weird frequency that was, and they were only doing like 1 or 2 flights. Or sorry, 1 or 2 calls per flight, so it's just not being used.
Yeah, I remember it used to have like the credit card slider there too, where you could like pay to call, right?
Yep.
So
and
weird.
I think a big nail in the coffin for those phones was the proliferation of Wi-Fi on flights.
Yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah, with Wi-Fi, and then like Chris said, that spectrum was auctioned off, and I think mobile phone companies purchased it. So yeah, it just wasn't really used anymore, and people had Wi-Fi. There was no need for it anymore at that point.
I think this movie came out like a year before they were decommissioned.
Yeah, 2005.
Yeah, it was real close.
What would they have done if they had no phones? What would he have made her do? Hey, connect to Wi-Fi.
Yeah, send your father a text message or
I can't
send a
connect.
hotel a
It's
text
in
message.
airplane mode.
Yeah,
I don't have a GoGo in-flight account. What am I supposed to do?
I don't want to pay the $18 to use Wi-Fi.
All right, here's my credit card. Go ahead.
There was one last minor note that I had about the movie is, we talked about Rachel McAdams goes to the bathroom and writes that message on the mirror. You see her like take some of the water from the faucet and like put it in her mouth and rinse her mouth out.
Oh yeah, I know what you're gonna say.
Don't ever do that.
Not potable.
Yeah, you should not drink that water that comes out of that faucet. And as a rule of thumb, personally, I do not drink coffee or hot tea on flights either, just because the water tanks on planes are nearly impossible to clean. You don't know what's built up in there, if there's scaling or deposits of some kind.
Ooh.
It's
Well, that just ruined a whole experience for me.
Yeah,
Because I definitely order coffee on planes.
please, Barbara, don't do that. I'm sure it's
Okay.
fine. I'm sure there's like they don't discourage it. Obviously, they provide it. It's just me. I'm wary of it just because it's you don't know what's in those tanks, and they're very difficult to clean.
It's an ignorance is bliss kind of thing.
Yeah.
Also, coffee makes me poop, so I don't want to do that on a plane.
And
So I
someone
avoid
could
the
just
coffee
unlock
anyway.
the door that you're in from outside. I mean, who knows?
Yeah.
Let me tell you, I do worry about that. Like, is some weirdo going to unlock the door and barge in here?
I know. Well, now especially that people know how to do it.
Maybe I should stop telling people.
I know. You cannot do it. It's impossible. Stay in your seats.
Or we'll send Cillian Murphy to get you.
Yeah.
It's an enjoyable movie, Red Eye. I just wanted to say that. Like, I'm glad that it's so short, like an hour, 25 minutes. I felt like if they had tried to stretch it out, it would have been like, okay, now it's too much. It's silly. It's, whatever. Like, they try to
Yeah.
assassinate the political person with a missile that's fired from a fishing
Yeah,
boat.
that was the
That
silly
still gets
thing.
fired, but doesn't even kill people. Like,
Yeah.
Like if you stop and think about it too much, the plot kind of falls apart because it's they're trying to assassinate this political guy, and Cillian Murphy has been, I guess, following Rachel McAdams for I think he said 8 weeks,
I think so, yeah.
yeah, a while.
which is a very long time to stalk someone who is just you need them to make a phone call to move.
Right. Like, surely
Like-
in those 8 weeks, you could find a different way to assassinate.
Yeah. Like their entire plan depended upon her making a phone call to move this person to a different room in the hotel.
Yeah.
And I was thinking like they had some sort of booby trap type thing, like it was easier to get into the room, or they had a way in and out. They were just like from a boat shooting a missile.
Giant.
Yeah.
Like, yeah.
Like it seems like if a missile, there's no subtlety there, right? If they're gonna shoot a missile, could they just shoot a missile like at any point, anytime?
Yeah.
like
At the car they were driving
Yeah.
up in?
yeah, couldn't they
Or
just?
like a gun at the actual guy they wanted to kill if they knew where he was.
That's-
Like, surely
yeah.
they were able to track his location in some capacity.
That's what I was. It's like I was thinking, oh, they're gonna go in there and have a way into the room to kill him. and discreetly and quietly and make,
it's just
get
a bunch
away
of
with it.
guys
No,
on
they're
a
just going to
boat.
shoot a missile from a boat.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah,
So-
not the most realistic film.
One other note about this film, when we did RTX, which is our event here in Austin a couple of months ago, I did a breakdown of the film Flight Plan, which is a Jodie Foster film that also takes place largely on a plane.
Is that the one where she goes into the cargo?
Yes, it is.
Okay, because I get those confused with Red Eye all the time, and I thought Red Eye was the one where she goes into the cargo space, and I was so excited to see that and talk about that. And as I was rewatching the movie, I was like, this doesn't happen here, does it?
Barbara, I can understand the confusion because both these films came out in 2005.
Oh,
These movies
twin
came out.
films.
They came out 1 month apart from each other. Red Eye came out August 19th, 2005. Flight Plan came out September 23rd, 2005.
My
Wow.
God. It's like the twin film phenomenon that happens so often.
Yeah, and so to the reason I bring that up is like to the point of why didn't they do this some other way? I think thriller movies on planes were like a hot thing at that moment. It was like, oh, we got to make a movie on a plane, and it's like, okay, let's figure out everything else just to get people on a plane to make something scary happen. Then,
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
so I picked a not scary movie at all. I picked the movie I want to talk about was Catch Me If You Can.
I love this movie.
Yeah.
It's a great movie. I don't think I've seen this since it had come out. I had to rewatch it for this. Great movie. And, it doesn't exclusively deal with aviation, but it does touch a lot of like that golden era of aviation in the early to mid 60s.
And when everyone wanted to be like a flight attendant or a pilot, and it was like this really glamorous, attractive job.
Right. So anyway, I just have a few notes about it.
Well, could you, in case people haven't seen it, like kind of a quick kind of overview of what the movie is about?
Sure. I feel like it's one of those movies that's like so big. I just totally
It's
skipped
also
over that.
based on a true story. Like
It
Chris's.
is. This one's much. There's no elephants in this one though.
Yeah, which was my big issue with the movie.
No pun
It's about like I guess kind of like a con artist who, when he's like 17, goes on this spree of impersonating people. There's a while where he pretends to be a pilot with Pan Am. He pretends to be a lawyer and actually becomes like an assistant prosecutor for the state of Louisiana. He pretends to be a doctor and gets a job at a hospital. And the whole thing is like, it's always scams. He's always like, getting these checks and washing them and passing them off as real, getting money, and then just like always moving on with his life.
And like having like specifically very respected jobs so that when he does bring these checks in or does like whatever, people, see the pilot's uniform. And so he like is automatically trustworthy in their eyes.
Right.
Yeah, they don't question it.
It's wild to me that this was possible, that this guy did this for so long.
I was going to ask, like, to what level of realism is it? Like, how much of the movie is actually pretty spot on from what happened in real life?
From what I understand, the movie is fairly accurate aside from the Tom Hanks FBI character. There was no like specific FBI agent that the main character would call or, who was pursuing him. It was just a bunch of FBI agents. So they kind of amalgamated several different agents into one character. And that was the Tom Hanks character in this movie. Aside from that, a lot of it is very accurate. And there was a lot that was very accurate about this movie from an aviation standpoint. When he's first trying to start learning how to act like a pilot, the main character, his name's Frank. So if you hear me say Frank, it's the main character in the movie. He's asking like, he pretends he's writing like an article for a school newspaper and goes and talks to like a Pan Am representative about planes. And, the planes that they list off are all, era correct. He says that Pan Am flies the DC-8, the 707, the Constellation, which were all, planes that they did fly at the time. And he's a very good forger. That's his thing. He's forging these checks. He forges credentials to try to, gain access. And he asks if he can take a picture of a pilot license for his report. And the person he's talking to gives him his license. It says, "Oh, you can have this license. This one's 3 years expired." In reality, pilot licenses have no expiration date. They're valid for life.
Really?
Yeah. The thing you have to keep current is your medical certificate. That you do have to renew every so often. But the pilot license itself is good for the rest of your life.
So is there, that brings up a completely separate question that I never knew the answer to. Is there an age limit on pilots? Like, because I imagine at some point, you're too old to fly. Although if like you're getting medically assessed, I'm sure that'll do the trick.
That's an excellent question. That's actually something that's being looked at currently in the United States. I can't speak to the rest of the world, so I'll speak to the United States. So what you think of as a pilot who flies for like an airline, we refer to those as ATP pilots, airline transport pilots. You are forced to retire at age 65.
Gotcha.
You can no longer be an ATP past 65. Because there's supposedly a pilot shortage right now, the FAA and legislators are looking at potentially increasing that age to 67. But as it stands right now, you can no longer be an ATP past 65.
And is there a minimum age?
I don't know that off the top of my head. That being said, there is a minimum age in order to be able to fly solo in an airplane. Like and get your private pilot license, and I believe that is 17 years old. So you would be that would be almost like a starting point where you can solo fly as a private pilot at 17, and then if you wanted to become an airline pilot, it takes several years to build the experience and get the certifications. So I mean, realistically, you might see an airline pilot as young as, if they hurry, maybe 21. But realistically, they're probably still building hours at that point.
Gotcha.
Most ATPs start their career, if I had to guess, around 25, maybe at the earliest.
That seems reasonable.
Yeah, it takes a long time. In order to be able to fly for an airline, you need to have 1,500 flight hours.
Which is why it's so funny that in this movie, or I guess in the story rather, he's able to trick his way into becoming quote unquote a pilot.
Yeah. Well, that rule actually changed not that long ago. It used to be you only needed 250 hours.
I was going to say, I bet back then, the qualifications of flying were a lot lower because there were less planes and less opportunity, and just
True.
less of a process.
Yeah, there was a crash that we covered in Black Box Down. It was Colgan Air Flight 3407 that crashed back in February 2009, and it was that crash that caused the legislation to be changed, where the minimum number of hours was raised from 250 to 1,500.
Gotcha.
Before that, it used to be 250. So theoretically, you could be younger. You could have been younger back then. Especially also, it was a different time. I think they had a lot of pilots who returned from military service, like post World War II. So it was a very different landscape.
That's so crazy to think about. I don't know if I'd want a 25-year-old flying me anywhere.
I bet you've had young pilots, especially on regional flights like American, like American Eagle, United Express, like some of the regional carriers tend to have a lot of the younger pilots who are, starting their careers.
That's crazy.
And in fact, it's funny you mentioned the thing about being young, because there is a scene where Frank goes to a tailor to get the pilot uniform. And the tailor makes a comment that says, "You look young to be a pilot."
Yeah.
And Frank replies, "Oh, I'm a co-pilot." And, we've talked about this before in Black Box Down. Anyone who is sitting at the controls, it's like you're either a captain or a first officer, but they are both pilots. So saying I'm a co-pilot is like kind of not correct, but that might be because his character doesn't actually know what he's saying.
Gotcha.
He's trying to act like he knows what he's saying. And it's funny because his uniform, after he gets it from the tailor, has 3 stripes on the shoulders and on the cuff, or I'm sorry, on the sleeve. Mm-hmm. And I don't know if you guys have ever paid attention to those stripes that are on pilot shoulders. 3 stripes indicates first officer.
Okay.
4 stripes indicates captain. So the fact that he had 3 stripes is kind of like correct. Since he said he was a co-pilot, then maybe the tailor was thinking he's a first officer and gave him 3 stripes instead of the 4.
Oh, okay.
If someone has 2 stripes, they're a second officer or maybe like a navigator, but you really don't see that very often anymore. It's typically 3 or 4 stripes that are in the cockpit.
I'm going to be looking at everyone's shoulders now.
In the movie, he doesn't actually fly any planes. He's always right?
He always manages to weasel his way out of doing the actual job he's pretending to do.
Yeah.
Yes.
Which is very impressive.
So as the pilot, he's always riding like on the plane it's a way to get free flights for him. So he'll like ride in the cockpit in the jump seat but he never actually touches the controls and flies a plane.
Yeah.
Oh, and his uniform the tailor told him the uniform cost $164. And I ran that through an inflation calculator. That's the equivalent of $1,567 today.
Wow.
That's expensive.
I would think so, yeah, because it's like pretty high quality and it's something that's like super official. I don't know. Mm-hmm. I could see them trying to bump that price up.
Yeah, and it's tailored to him, so it's expensive. But yeah, like you said, Barbara, I could see that being plausible.
Yeah.
And like I said, he's a forger. He's forging checks. So he starts off, pretending to be a pilot and forging Pan Am checks. And the hotel has a limit of $300 that it'll cash for checks. So he makes his paychecks $299.12, which is the equivalent of $2,858.78 today.
Wow. Damn, inflation's real.
Inflation is real. So there was another thing I thought was interesting. When these portions of the film where he's pretending to be a pilot for Pan Am are set in the early to mid 1960s. And this is more of like a footnote, just a little bit of trivia. Pan Am started using the Pan Am logo and name in 1955. So this is period correct. I have seen some people say it's not period correct because before that, Pan American Airways used to be referred to as PAA. And the Pan Am logo actually did start, and that name did start in 1955. So it is period correct, despite the fact I've seen some people online say it is not period correct. I just wanted to point that out. And there's some really cool, I think some of the old Pan Am iconography and graphics are really iconic and really cool. Like I said, golden era of aviation. This stuff's really interesting to me. And then we also see some TWA aircraft a few times. And, they show the TWA logo with the two-stripe logo, which is also very iconic. However, that logo was not introduced until 1975. So that was not period correct. Trans World Airways used a different logo at the time that we're supposed to be seeing these planes. I'm huge into the golden era aviation.
I love it.
Like iconography. Yeah, so that's why I was like, oh, that's not right. After Frank gets arrested in France and he's being brought back to the United States, he's on a plane with the Tom Hanks FBI character. And they're flying over LaGuardia, and Frank's sitting at, the window seat, and he looks out the window and he says, oh, look, there's LaGuardia. There's runway 44 at LaGuardia. There is no runway 44 ever anywhere in the world.
Do you think they did that just because they didn't want people actually trying to, locate like a real location from the film?
Well, I was thinking the only plausible explanation would be that Frank has no idea what he's talking about because he's not actually a pilot.
Oh, that's true.
But runways do have big numbers painted on them. So I don't know. It seems like a gaffe. Any legit runway would be numbered anywhere from 01 all the way to 36 because they're numbered based on compass radials, how the runway lines up with a compass. That way you're in the right direction on the right runway. So that's why there's only 360 degrees in a circle. There's not 440. That's why you would never have a runway 44.
Gotcha. Today I learned.
Yeah. And again, there's another scene in this movie with, the main character, Frank, is in the bathroom and the FBI agents are pounding on the door trying to get him out, but they can't get in there because he locked it. Again, you can just unlock these doors from the outside.
Yeah.
They end up having to bust down the door looking for him. And it's like, they could have just unlocked the door. It's not a big deal. And then there was a location. This is not aviation related. This is movie nerd related.
Of course.
I watch a lot of movies. I love film. I recognized a location in this film that I've seen in other movies. There's a scene where Tom Hanks' character, the FBI agent, is sitting down in a diner, and he's, he had just encountered Frank for the first time, and Frank gave him the fake name of Barry Allen, and, he's drinking coffee, and a waiter comes by, and it's like, oh, Barry Allen, that's the Flash. And anyway, Tom Hanks' character is sitting in this diner as he's, being poured this coffee and going over this paperwork. That same diner has been in a bunch of other movies. I recognized it from Seven, Training Day, Ghost World. In all of those movies, there's a diner scene, and they all sit in this either in this same booth where Tom Hanks is or the one right next to it. I was like, this is the exact same diner I've seen in so many other movies.
Did that take you out of it? What does that do to you when you see that in movies?
Well, for me, I was like, this looks familiar. And I had to pause it and look it up. And I was like, this is the exact same. It did take me out of it just because I didn't recognize it when I first saw this movie back, in the theater. But, rewatching it for this episode, I was like, let me pause this and look this up. I was like, yep, that is the exact same diner.
I just love that movie. It's just so fun to watch.
Mm-hmm. It's a great movie.
I also just love any movie that's based around scam artists or heists or anything like that. Just seeing people pull off things. It's always really satisfying in a way.
I would say out of the 3 movies we've talked about, this is the best.
I would agree.
It's really, really a good movie. It's on Netflix. That's how I watched it. If you haven't seen it, I'd highly recommend it. It's really, really good.
Later tonight.
Yeah. Yeah. Well, anyway, that's all I had for Catch Me If You Can. Like I said, it's not aviation isn't the entire movie. There's just like a section where he pretends to be a pilot, and that's where the bulk of this stuff takes place.
It's a good 30 minutes of the movie, though. I feel.
Yeah, it's a good chunk, and also I feel like doesn't he come back to being a pilot like a few times throughout the movie, even at the end?
Yeah. Later, then he revisits it, and there's in fact you talked about how. It was very glamorous to be a pilot or a flight attendant at the time. That's one of the scams he runs later. Is he pretends to be recruiting flight attendants to, work for Pan Am, and he surrounds himself with a bunch of fake flight attendants to sneak past
women,
the FBI. Yeah. And I saw people online point out that I didn't want to get in this level of detail, but I saw because I don't know this for a fact, but I saw online people were talking about how the flight attendants that he has to surround himself with are not wearing their uniforms correctly, that the hats aren't put on correctly, and the uniforms aren't buttoned up right, but that's plausible because he doesn't know either. He just has them as a distraction.
Yeah.
That's not they're not real flight attendants.
And it seems to be working for everyone else there too.
Yeah.
Yeah, anyway, great movie. 2 thumbs up.
Way, way up.
But that's about it, I think, for this episode. I want to give a big thank you to Barbara for joining us and talking about Red Eye and all of our other films here.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me. And yeah, as we mentioned at the top of the show, definitely check out our D&D podcast, Tales from the Sticky Dragon, wherever you get podcasts. We have a ton of fun on that show, and Gus is an amazing DM, and Chris plays a hilarious character named Gum Gum, who my character and him have a really fun little interaction relationship going on.
Yeah. It's
it's a great show.
Yeah, it's really, really fun. And we were looking at some of the reviews recently and saw some reviews posted I listened to Black Box Down and didn't know anything about D&D and started listening to it, and I really like it, and that's great to hear. And so thank you for people who have given it a listen, and because that really helps. Helps.
Definitely.
And we appreciate it.
Yeah. All right. Well, see you guys next time.
Yeah. It's Tales from the Stinky Dragon. Go listen.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.